More often than not, roller coasters bring me joy. They're fast, they're thrilling, and most importantly, fun. But every once in a while, I ride a coaster so bad that I have no intentions of ever riding it again. That may be because it's boring, but usually it's because it hurts. Maybe it has bad restraints, maybe it has poor track work, or it could fall into the elite category of coasters that provide both. This video will count down the top 25 worst roller coasters out of the 1,033 that I have ridden. Before starting, I want to note that I will not be including any kiddie coasters unless they were extremely painful. There are 3 kiddie coasters that fall into that dubious category. I will also only list one version of a specific ride model. For example, I will only list one SLC and one Boomerang. Otherwise, this list would probably have a dozen SLCs. I also want to note that you will not see any Zamperla Volares on this list, because I actually enjoy those rides. I know I'm in the minority there, but they don't beat me up. And since a majority of these rides just flat out hurt, I'm going to include a pain meter to let you know what you will hurt if you ride any of these rides. Number 25, Alpine Flyer at Rowdy Bear Ridge. This is essentially an inverted mountain coaster crossed with an interactive shooting dark ride. And I think the ride system could work if it was placed indoors with some theming. However, being outdoors on an empty hillside with no theming does not work with this ride system. It was a rather boring ride, and the sun's glare made it near impossible to hit many of the targets. But this is one of the few rides in this list that does not hurt to its defense. Number 24, Mad Mouse at Fuji-Q Highland. If you've ever been to Japan, you're probably aware that ride vehicles from Japanese manufacturers are extremely cramped. Mad Mouse falls into this category. But unlike most parks in Japan that have a very strict no loose articles policy, this ride requires you to bring all your bags with you. This resulted in an extremely tight fit for 2 adults riding in this car with our bags. Combine that with a persistent rattle, and it was a very uncomfortable ride experience. Number 23, Schweizer Bobbahn at Europa Park. This ride looks great in the Switzerland area, but it had an extremely bad vibration. It's a common problem for a lot of the mock bobsleds if you ask me, but this one was the worst offender. It felt like I rode a shopping cart down a cobblestone road. Number 22, Sequoia Magic Loop at Gardaland. This ride is slow and awkward, and it's not hard to see why more of those S&S Screaming Squirrels were not built. The drops, if you can even call them that, are heavily braked and controlled, so you have no thrills. You just spend an uncomfortable amount of time suspended upside down as your shoulders bear all your body weight. Number 21, Vekoma Boomerangs with Aero Trains. Most Boomerangs are nowhere near this list, but the ones running Aero Trains are worthy of this spot. These Boomerangs track far worse than the ones with the Vekoma trains, and they're riddled with headbanging. And because of how forceful the inversions are, it is an extremely nauseating experience, especially going backwards while you're getting headbanging. Number 20, Wildcat at Lake Compounds. This wood coaster is nearly 100 years old, and the park decided to retract this classic ride a few years ago. And it replaced the old 3-bench PTC trains with Millennium Flyers. However, the coaster somehow got rougher. It has 0 airtime, it never did. And it will rattle you into oblivion, which becomes especially uncomfortable if you're stapled by the unforgiving lap bar that wants to continuously lower during the ride. Number 19, Canyon Blaster at Great Escape. The first half of this ride is slow and pointless. The second half has a decently fast double helix, but the dip in between levels is quite rough, especially because of the speed at which you take it. Your legs will smack against that U-bar a few times during the ride. Number 18, Carolina Goldrusher at Carowinds. This ride may be small, but it has some really bad transitions. The entrance into the helix in particular is quite jarring even if you're bracing for it. Even if this ride were smooth, it would at best be equal to Trailblazer. It's not very fast and rather boring. Number 17, the Jungle Mouse at Hamanako Pal Pal. I am convinced this ride ran with square wheels. It is shocking how shaky this ride is. The one saving grace about this ride is that it travels so slowly that it can't inflict much pain upon riders. Number 16, Crazy Mouse at Hirakata Park. This is supposed to be a Reverchon spinning mouse. I say supposed to because the spin was disabled on every single vehicle. This made the laterals in the second half, where you're supposed to be spinning normally, extremely uncomfortable because I kept banging into the curved side of the vehicle. I don't have any footage of this ride, so I'm showing some video footage of the version at Steel Pier that has the same issue on a few vehicles. Number 15. Fabbri Power Mice. These spinning coasters actually spin, but the lap bars in this one are awful. They sit rather high, so they'll jab you in the stomach on the ascents and abrupt brakes. Combine that with a poor layout, and you have a really bad coaster. Number 14. Olandese Volante at Rainbow MagicLand. Even in the old days of Vekoma, they were at least able to make quality mine trains. So it is absolutely baffling to me why this 2011 mine train is so rough. The trains are completely unpadded hard plastic, which becomes an issue when you have a horrid rattle and some sudden brutal laterals. It's a shame because this mine train actually looked great. Number 13. Nightmare at Crack Axle Canyon at Great Escape. This was an indoor Schwarzkopf Jetstar. I enjoyed Tiger at Indiana Beach, but the one at Great Escape had a lot of issues. One, it was in brutal shape, so it was shakier than any other Schwarzkopf I have ever experienced. Two, the fact the ride was in darkness obscured the high speed, low to the ground turns, so it was exceedingly easy to smash your side against the train. Three, the building had no air conditioning or ventilation, so it was an absolute furnace in there on hot days. Number 12. Goliath at Six Flags New England. With the original trains, this ride would have been nowhere near this list. That's why none of the other giant inverted boomerangs would come close to this spot. But with the premier trains that Six Flags New England added, Goliath became a torture device. The restraints are extremely bulky, so headbanging is inevitable. And during the high G segments, these restraints will staple your thighs. And then the final stop in the vertical lift will crush your groin. The first drop is still amazing, so this ride does have one redeeming value, but I dread everything that follows. Number 11. Apocalypse at Six Flags America. The floorless conversion to Firebird was a vast improvement if you ask me. In its old form, the original B&M stand-up was painful. The ride doesn't track particularly well, and that is an issue when you're in stand-up trains. The giant over-the-shoulder restraints will constantly bang against your head, and the bike seat can also deliver a few shots to your groin if it's positioned incorrectly. Number 10. Kiddy Hawk at Carowinds. The newer Vekoma suspended coasters are fantastic. They're smooth and have very open restraints. Kiddy Hawk is an older version with flawed track work and bulky over-the-shoulder restraints. This results in countless shots to the head, which is surprising for a ride meant for children. Number 9. Range at Yesterland Farm. I have a separate review for this one, but this ride is so brutally rough that the park even admits it. They have a sign out front warning riders that it's a rough ride. This ride looks like death, sounds like death, and rides like death. It is extremely jerky in the turns, and the trains are completely made of metal with zero padding, so you have nothing to absorb this ride's constant jackhammering and shimmying. Number 8. Orient Express at Palace Playland. I only rode this once when I was a kid, and I have avoided it ever since. This is a Wisdom kiddie coaster that starts with a helix that will smash you against the side of the train. That's followed by a bunny hill. That's actually fine, but the final, unbanked turn will violently slam you against the side of the vehicle, and you just keep going around and around in this one, getting more and more smacks each time. Number 7. Tiger Express at the Washington State Fair. There are so many things wrong with this kiddie coaster. First, if you're an adult, you have to get stapled to ride. Second, the ride is unbelievably rough. I expected the drops and turns to be awful, but even the lift hill had violent bangs to it. I don't even know how Wisdom Rides managed to accomplish that. Third, this ride gave 13 laps. 13 freaking laps. 13 is a really unlucky number. Number 6. Chance Toboggans. These rides start off as snooze fests with a repetitive, slow spiral down the tower, but it turns into a torture device on the drops. There are not many rides where I hope I don't get airtime, but this is one of them. Because of the extremely cramped vehicles, your head is likely going to be grazing against the ceiling, and when you get airtime, you will smash it into the ceiling, and it hurts a lot. Number 5. Coast Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. There is no way a mock wild mouse should be anywhere near this list, but the Parque made a modification that ruined the ride. The Parque added shin guards. Unlike shin guards on the RMCs that contour around your shins, this is a flat bar that comes down with a restraint. So if you get stapled like I did, the shin guard will unforgivingly dig into your shin and it will even leave a mark. The layout is otherwise smooth and rather slow for a mouse, but I could only focus on the pressure on my shins and the pain it was causing. Number 4, Rainier Rush at the Washington State Fair. Top Fun did not make many coasters, and it's not hard to see why. This ride is some of the worst trains in the world. They're extremely cramped, with hard, over-the-shoulder restraints that extend above your head. The ride also has really poor track work, so you're sure to hit your head at several points. But for good measure, the ride also manages to mess up this off-axis airtime hill. This hill actually gives some good airtime, and that's the problem. Your knees are positioned right below this metal bar, so when you get airtime, your knee will smack hard into that metal bar and it hurts. Number 3, Blue Tornado at Gardaland. This is easily the worst Vekoma SLC I have ever ridden. Almost every SLC tracks poorly, and Blue Tornado is no different. But at least most SLCs have the extremely cushioned over-the-shoulder restraints in an attempt to mitigate the concussive blasts. This one has hard over-the-shoulder restraints, so you're pretty much guaranteed to come off with a migraine because you're constantly hitting that hard restraint. Number 2, Harley Quinn Crazy Coaster at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Almost everything RMC touches turns to gold. However, Skyline Attractions took RMC's track and managed to create a rough and nauseating coaster. Now I know it's debatable if this counts as a coaster or not, but I want to consider it a coaster just so it can get the attention it deserves on this list. This ride is obnoxiously loud and unbelievably rattly. Harley Quinn was like riding a super loop that tracked as well as the back row of Mean Streak. When you mix in neck-chopping transitions on the Immelman, while you're still being vibrated no less, the ride reaches a special level of awfulness. I really hope Skyline can improve the tracking on future models because it is absolutely horrific here. And coming in at number 1 is Coaster Express at Parque Warner Madrid. This coaster is awful. Every inch of RCCA track is imperfectly designed to inflict as much pain as possible on the riders. This ride is non-stop jackhammering, bouncing, and shaking. And the intimate trains with the classic T-bar restraints don't help. Usually I love these restraints, but on a brutally rough wooden coaster, that metal bar in the center becomes a weapon. It will beat your legs mercilessly. I hate this ride, and it earns the top spot because of its roughness and length. It is by far the longest ride in this list, with 4,574 feet, or 1,394 meters of track. If you want to hear me rant about this ride more, I have a separate review. So those are my top 25 least favorite roller coasters in the world. What is your least favorite roller coaster? I would love to hear down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if you gave it a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.